Welcome back to the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm Nick Daschel, and I cover Oregon State football and basketball for the Oregonian and OregonLive. Has anyone slept since that Beavers midnight miracle down on the farm where the Beavers beat Stanford 28-27? I know it must have left for people getting to bed late that night because it was pretty exciting finish. Kyle, I'm assuming you were there. You watched the game, television or somehow?
I was at home, stayed up till about 12 o'clock. Had to watch it the whole way through.
Yeah. So I was obviously at the game. In fact, I was standing about maybe 5 to 10 yards from Tre'Shaun Harrison, where he caught the ball over the corner's shoulder and helmet and pulled it down. And I guess that's probably a good place to start in this game because, well, that's what won the game. As a defensive back, what did you see on that play?
I mean, truly honest, I saw great coverage. I just saw a better play and somebody that wanted it more by a receiver. I mean, he somehow snuck it like right beside his head, and he was able to get the ball, pull it over, and turn around and take it for 6, which was an amazing play. Probably the highlight of the whole game. But it was a great play by the receiver, great coverage by the DB. It wasn't in his luck at that moment.
So one that's come up a little bit from people I've talked to is they wondered what the safety was doing. He kind of stood there, and I don't know if he was stunned at what was going on or what, but he kind of stood there and he gave Harrison just enough of a beat there to get past him.
Yeah, so when I was looking at it, I think that the safety was actually supposed to be over top. But I think because of the placement of where the corner was, it just seemed like, the ball was going to be, incompletion, game would be over really almost after that. But I think he was just sort of stunned at that moment where it just sort of threw him off that he actually had caught the ball and turned up and just started going. So in those moments, it's like, oh, what do you do? Because you just like, oh, I think the game's over. I don't know where the ball went. And then all of a sudden you see him take off. I mean, it's hard to sort of recover from that where you're like, oh, now I got to actually track him down, run him down, and somehow get a saving tackle, which, yeah, I'm happy he wasn't able to.
I imagine of all, that's got to be a defensive back's worst nightmare is a play like that. One where you think you got it, and next thing you know, the guy's 5 yards in the clear, and there's no chance of catching him, and it's for the game.
I've never had one happen to me where it was in the for a do or die of winning the game. I've had one happen in a game, and you sort of blink and you're like, oh, he didn't catch it. And all of a sudden you see either somebody stand up and it's like, yeah, and the crowd's going wild. And you're just like, wait, he actually caught that. And you actually got to look at it on instant replay. Like, I would have never thought he'd have caught it. So, I mean, yeah, as a corner safety, it's your worst luck moment. Somebody made a Houdini play.
Yeah. When, Tre'Shaun Harrison, he went into the season, he was kind of the de facto number one receiver for Oregon State, but he really hadn't proven that, he was legit. And then he had a couple of struggle games where it was drops and people wondered, is he really the guy? And I think over the last 4 or 5 games, he's really proven he's Oregon State's best receiver, big play guy. He's not imposing by any means, but what do you see from Harrison as a receiver, as somebody that, you would be covering?
So what I see from Harrison as a receiver, like as a fan and a corner point of view, is he has all the attributes to be to be that number one receiver and very nationally known. But then at the same time, he has inconsistent moments where it's like earlier in the game, he'll drop a wide open one. He'll drop another one, like simple passes. But then when you need him to make spark plays, that's where he always prevails. And it's like shocking and amazing. And it's like, you love it. And it's like, now I just wish as a fan, it's like, catch the simple ones. But like, as a fan, you're like, this is the guy we got to go to since Musgrave is out. And he will show up and he'll show you that light in those moments that's needed most.
Yeah. So 28-27, Oregon State wins. I don't think I'm breaking news here by saying Oregon State didn't play well. I mean, on either side of the ball, really. But I mean, they had some moments, but it probably wasn't. It definitely wasn't one of the top three performances of the season. But they won the game, and it doesn't really matter if you win ugly. It's still a win. I mean, it's great to play well, but I'm guessing Oregon State would take this one any day over the USC game, which might have been their best game they played, and they lost. So, what sort of impact does a win like this have on a team going forward? One where you don't play well and you miraculously come out with a win.
I mean, if I'm Coach Smith, I'm going in the locker room like, yeah, you guys, hey, that was not our best game, but you got to look at the overall picture. A win's a win, and now we're 4-2. We need to just keep this rolling and keep the momentum of the wins. And so, hopefully they come up and they go, that wasn't our best game, but we did what we had to do to get out of it and come up with a win. And we just need to start sacking again, especially with the 2 streak losses. Oregon State just needs to really they've turned it over on this one, and now they just need to keep it moving and just keep playing better and better week in and week out. And, stop all the little penalties, no fights, no nothing. It's just, they just need to, heads down, and they need to see the big pictures, bowl game, Pac-12, and so on and so forth.
My sense is that when the team got together yesterday for meeting, going over video and stuff, Jonathan and the coaches, while they were happy they won the game, I think they pounded their fist pretty hard on the table about the performance and what needs to be fixed and what needs to change, because they're not going to win many games going forward playing like that. And that was my sense, is that there was so many things that just need to be cleaned up in that game, but regardless, Oregon State's 4-2. The big picture, they headed in the second half. They got 4 of their 6 games at home. Some really winnable games, Colorado and California for sure. Washington State's going to be difficult, but it's at home. Arizona State is starting to look like a bit of a challenge, but that's a doable game. And then the Huskies up at Husky Stadium in Oregon to finish the season off. So, I mean, another 4-2 record second half of the year is certainly possible, and maybe even 5 out of 6. What do you see as possible here the second half of the season?
So, I mean, coming from this game, and I wanted to speak about this too, I've noticed a trend with the new, or I'm going to call them the revamped Oregon State, is that they have all the ability to be great, but they love to play at the competition's level. So, you get a decent team and they'll play decent, but they're going to try to come out with the win. You play USC, a top-ranked team, and they're going to play to that level. So they have all the potential. When you look in the next few games where we got 4, 6 at home, I mean, we're always great at home. I see us doing well at home. And as long as we're playing to the ability that we can play at, and then starting to see that they are a better team than what they play at, I say that out of the next 6 games, we have opportunity to go 5-1.
Yeah, I mean, another 4-2 stretch second half gets you to 8-4, and probably something along the lines of a Holiday Bowl or Vegas Bowl or something like that. You win 5 of your last 6, you're 9-3. The bowl games really start to get pretty good, and then who's to say they couldn't sweep the final 6 and get to 10-2, and maybe their stuff blows up and they get in the Pac-12 title game. But I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, especially after the game Saturday, which was a win, but man, it didn't I'm guessing it didn't impress either one of us, from a technical standpoint. But so, I think what Saturday did for sure was assure that there's going to be a bowl game. I mean, it's hard to imagine they're not going to win at least 2 games down the stretch and get to at least 6. So that win was big in that respect. So, I don't know if you got anything else on that, but I was going to let's start breaking down the game, starting with Ben Galbinson, his first start at quarterback. He was 20 out of 28 for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning throw. What did you think of Ben's first start as at quarterback for Oregon State?
I don't think he played too bad. He made decent throws. On top of, there's really no turnovers. That's the thing that makes me happiest. He got through the game. He worked well, and I think that it's not just him that needs to. I think as time goes on, he'll get better. I think it's an overall team aspect. That's why the game was it was low energy. It was animosity towards the other team. There was no fight in the game. It was all external, like where they had more beef towards the other team as in individuals players, whereas not trying to win the game. So I think that he sort of played his part. He did well. I think it was an overall team thing that really brought why it didn't look so well. So I think he played well in his position. He did what he could, especially first start. He came out with the win on his first game. So that's all you can really ask for a first time starting quarterback.
Yeah, I thought, obviously there were some issues with Ben maybe holding on to the ball too long because he took 4 sacks, and Oregon State's only given up 2 sacks in their first 5 games. So hard to pin all that on the offensive line. I'm pretty sure some of that was on Ben. But some of those throws he made, the one he made to Silas Bolden on 4th down in the end zone, that was as good as you could throw a football. Right in the right spot, and Bolden makes the perfect play there. He had some other throws that were pretty remarkable too. We don't know what's going to happen this week, in terms of a starting quarterback. At the moment, Chance Nolan he's in concussion protocol. It's not a neck strain. He's in concussion protocol, so we don't know when he'll get cleared. If he does, it's possibly one of those two could start. But I say at this moment, it's probably going to be Galbinson. Kind of, what are your thoughts on the differences between those two quarterbacks?
There's a lot of upside to Chance Nolan, but with as many interceptions as there was, I would still take my chance on Galbinson, just because, even though he held the ball too long at times, you got to give it to him. It's his first start. He's really trying to get used and acclimated to everything. I see him prevailing more times than not and playing better. He threw 2 the week before, but at the same time, just let him get used to everything. Let him figure out the offense. Let him get all the confidence that he needs. And, I like the way he moves. He moves well. He can hold the ball too much, but those are little things you can work on. And, he makes great throws. I think both quarterbacks are great, but at this moment, it depends with sort of how long the season goes and how he does next game, or if you give him another start. I think they should take their chances on him and try to see what happens. And then from there, really, go back to seeing what quarterback to really start. But right now, I'm going with him over Chance Nolan.
Yeah, I thought going into this game, if Ben looked really good, I thought he would be the starter for the rest of the season. I don't think he did enough Saturday to say that definitively, but if he gets another start and he works out some of those kinks, I can definitely see Ben being the starter the rest of the season. He can just make plays in the passing game that, not to say Chance can't, but he just has a better, bigger arm. So we'll see what happens Saturday. One thing that did come out of Saturday's game was the running game. Running game was better than it's been all year. Some of that's obviously due to Stanford. Their run defense isn't the best, but there was some explosiveness out of the running game. They averaged 6 yards a carry. We saw Damian Martinez break a long one for a touchdown. We saw Sean Fenwick really hit some good runs up the middle. Jam Griffin had some decent runs. I just thought the running game was a positive from Stanford.
Yeah, I agree. I think Martinez is finally starting to come into his own. I think he's starting to understand everything, starting to get those bigger feet than just a freshman, which is really nice to see. I think with Griffin getting the ball a lot more, it shows that our run game is getting a lot better. I'm still trying to figure out Fenwick, where at times I feel like, he could have, and there was one play where they set the C's wide open for him. So, he had 10 yards before even getting touched. And when he did, he fell. And so, like, every once in a while, I'm like, I just want to see those yak yards, the yards after carry, like after contact. Like, I need to see your 6 foot, 6'2", like 215. I need to see you hit somebody with that 215 and break it and then, move on to the third level. And so I think he has the potential, but at times he still falls after first hit, which is at times frustrating to me. Griffin might be smaller, but at the same time, he takes contact, runs with it, and then still keeps it going. And he could take a second and third, and then he still might still be going. So at times, I think he's one of the more primary backs, but our run game looked great this week, which, again, Stanford's defense isn't run stop as well, but I think it's a great confidence booster to build off of.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've thought the same thing about Fenwick. He does run hard until he gets hit, and then he does tend to go down more often than not. And I'm sure that's something they're working on. That the difference between being an average back and a good back is somebody that can make extra yards after getting hit the first couple times. So, but I think he remains a starter just because he can run up the middle and he does give him some production in that area. But I don't know. I still think at some point Damian Martinez is going to be the starting running back, but that remains to be seen. Maybe these next 2 games, we'll see how it goes, and then after the bye week, maybe they start turning to one guy and really working him over. But and the other thing in that regard is that all 3 have been, none of them have been worn down through these 6 games, so they all should be pretty fresh going into November.
I think that's a positive, is that you have such unique backs where you have Martinez, Fenwick, and Griffin, and including Lowe if he's coming back. But because they're so unique in their own way, you have the ability to keep them all fresh throughout the whole season, where they're not just wearing and tearing completely on their body. So I think that's a positive of having the depth of the backs. But at the same time, they need to find that primary guy. And I think Martinez will be that guy, whether it's later this season or it's the start of next season. I see him being that primary, and with Griffin being a sophomore, they have that great second person to third person, fourth. So I think it's really good though.
Yeah, that's true about Trey Lowe. We forgot about him. Jonathan did say today that he's getting closer. He says that a lot. I'm beginning to think that we may see him after the bye week, and that's just a guess. But I think that he's somebody you could probably expect to see at some point in November, and maybe it's right after the bye week. But red zone issues, boy, this team had none of them early in the season, but they also had Luke Musgrave. They don't have Luke Musgrave right now. They may not have him the rest of the year. That's something I'm writing about on OregonLive here later today, is about Luke Musgrave. But they get the last couple games they've got in the red zone, and it's been turnovers and it's been field goal attempts. Very few touchdowns coming out of that. I don't know how you fix that, other than you just got to come up with the right mix of plays with the players you got on the field now to make it happen. Maybe it's more Jack Coletto. I don't know. What are you seeing on the red zone stuff?
I mean, I 100% agree with you. I think it's not even the mix of plays. The play calling is not the issue, in my opinion. As much as I hated listening to Coach Anderson say this, it's the buy-in. You have to buy in when you get to the red zone. That's the moment that your eyes light up and everything goes green. Like, you should be like, I put in a hard work down the field. It's time to pay it off. And so they need to be able to, hunker down more and be ready, because all these flags pushing us back, the interceptions and the field goals, it's like, why go all that way for something, for either nothing or little to nothing? I think they need to buy in more, understand Coach Smith's making the right play call, and they got to just want it. Because I feel like in times when you get to the red zone, the playbook is wide open between the 20 to the 10 to the 5. Like, you can do so much, and it gives the defense, there's so much room that you can do so many things. They need to understand that Coach Smith's calling a play for an exact reason, and we just got to put it to full his scenario, exactly how he thinks it can go, it should be able to go like that. But they just need to understand we can't have any defaults or any wrongs of our own to set us back, or we need to be able to hunker down and just fight through this because it's going to happen. We should score. Like Oregon State went from one of the best red zone teams to I don't know where they've been at the last 2 weeks. I mean, so it's frustrating to see, and it's really up to that O-line, receivers, drop balls, the quarterback, no interceptions, and just no flags. It's like you just got to get in. You're there. What's the point in not getting? What's the point in not scoring if you're going to get all the way down there?
Yeah, I think if I'm right, I think the one time they did score in the red zone happened to be it was set up by the freshman tight end who caught Jack Velling, who caught an 18-yard pass at the one. It was another great throw and catch. That was the only. I mean, that was the only red zone opportunity as I recall from that game. And I know they kicked a couple of field goals and missed, or they missed a field goal, and they were able to kick another one after missing the first one, but getting it in on a penalty. Which leads me to my next thing, penalties. God, this team just keeps shooting itself in the foot with penalties. It's just something you don't expect to see out of a veteran team, but the drives are just getting destroyed by penalties. And I don't know. It seemed like against Stanford, it was almost like Stanford had in the back of their head they could get in Oregon State's head a little bit, and they were kind of getting a little chippy there in the first half, and drew them into some personal fouls. So I don't know how you. I mean, I guess outside of running up or doing up downs in practice and running extra, I don't know how much more you can do. The penalties. Let's see, Oregon State had 9 for 90 against Stanford, which wasn't a season high, and actually, penalties weren't an issue against Utah. They only had 3 that game, and they didn't have a terrible amount against USC, but they've had some early in the year, and then it just came up in a big way against Stanford, like I said, and I think they had 9, and there's probably a couple that don't even count because they were offsetting or whatnot. So I don't know how you fix that.
I was annoyed that I'd actually have to hear the ref talk and him on camera more than I saw the game. I feel like he was on camera half the game, and like the commentators, because it was RG3, they were literally saying, "Oh, there's the ref again. Oh, there's the ref. I'm pretty sure he's gonna make his own TV show this time," because he was on the screen just as much as the game. And so I think it really goes down to being detailed, and like they're just not detailed enough where the false starts, the holding. Like if you're there, just let it go. If you can't get it, you can't get the block, let it go. You got yards, call it what it is. But I think it literally comes down to the detail, and that's a matter of grit and want and understanding more so than just doing something dumb, especially all like the pass interferences on top of the personal fouls. Like, why are you fighting with the other team? Like, you're hurting yourself. You're not hurting them. You're hurting yourself. And so It's like, man up, own it, go to the next play. And if you want to hit them in the game, not after the flag's already called, not after the whistle's already blown. And so it's just self-discipline. So that's something that Oregon State needs to work on, and the details. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not even sure how Coach Smith's going to try to go about that issue, but I think it's more of in the locker room, the leaders need to talk and be like, this is our biggest issue right now, and this is what's holding us out. And so we need to fix this, and like they need to actually have like a real conversation from leader from the O-line, leader from the receivers, leader from the corners, leader from the safeties, leader to the linebackers, and leader to the quarterback. And, when it happens, it's like, I need to own this, and, I'm working on it, and this shouldn't happen again. I got you guys' back. So.
Yeah, it's just not one area of the team either. It seems to be going on throughout the team on the penalties. Defensively, I don't know what to make of Oregon State's performance against Stanford. I mean, statistically, it was fine. They gave up 359 yards. They gave up 3 touchdowns. For the 5th time in 6 games, they gave up less than 400 yards, which is pretty good, really. I mean, if you give up less than 400 yards in college football today, that's not bad. And Stanford's offense isn't it's not the best, but it's not terrible. I mean, Tanner McKee is considered to be one of the better quarterbacks in the Pac-12. He has a good tight end and a good receiver, and Filkins is a decent running back. The line, is average, but so I can't come away killing Oregon State's defensive performance, but I've seen better, I guess, this year. I mean, what did you think?
I think you're right. It was a very average game. There's nothing you can really bash on them about or talk badly. It's like, they've played better. They could have been better, but, they got the job done. They kept them under 400 yards. That's great. But if you look at sort of the season and how it's sort of prevailed so far through weeks 1 through week 5 now, going into week 6, the games that we've won, and I'm pretty sure I'm fully correct on this, the games that we've won, we've had a turnover. We've had an interception or a fumble. So, that's what we need to do because we need that energy. And so, it's just a very average play, average game for the defense, but, it works out. It worked out for that game.
Yeah, it'd been. I know they didn't have a takeaway against USC and Utah, and those were obviously losses. I don't believe they had a takeaway against Fresno State, but yeah, I mean takeaways they make a big difference in a game. It didn't really impact this game that much, but Oregon State didn't have any turnovers either, so at least there was that. I don't know. One thing I always look for from this defense is how do they play on the second series, because it seems like this defense oftentimes needs a series to see what they're doing, see what Fresno's doing, seeing what Montana State's doing, seeing USC Utah, and they seem to play better on the second series once they get a little taste. And same thing with Stanford in that their slow mesh offense. Stanford went right down the field and scored on the first drive. And then after that, they kind of Oregon State kind of buckled down and sort of controlled Stanford for most of the rest of the game. So from that standpoint, I was, kind of impressed because that's something I kind of looked at with this team. Now, a couple of the issues, the 2-point conversion on the winning touchdown where Ben Galbinson just took a knee and they passed. They didn't even try to go for it. Instead of making it a 3-point lead, they just said, nope, we're just going to take a knee. We're not going to give Stanford any chance at all to somehow get a takeaway and score on a 2-point. You can score on a 2-pointer, in college football. Jonathan didn't want to open that door. Today he said, in retrospect, I wish we'd gone for it. He kind of felt bad. He said it was too conservative. It was the wrong call. But particularly looking back, he said, Stanford did have 13 seconds and 2 timeouts. So there was some possibility of Stanford, doing something on that final drive. So in that respect, he definitely thinks that was the wrong call, and he owned it. So I don't know more we could say about that one other than I know people were stunned that Oregon State just altogether passed on that one.
Yeah, it was a little stressful. I was definitely like, I don't know why you do that, and then I'm happy he came up with the interception at the end, but I probably would have, even go for 2, especially since the time before they couldn't kick the field goal, so they had to go for 2 because the long snapper was hurt or on the sideline. I think he had a cut or something, so they didn't bring in a second string snapper. So they went for 2 and didn't get the 2-point conversion. So at that time, I'd be like, you have to go for 2. Like, I feel like that'd be the smartest thing. But, Coach Smith said it himself. He was like, looking back, I would have gone for 2. I own that. And, lucky to come out with a win. So, I think these are all moments of, learning a lesson. So, like, when you look future games, you know what to do in the right circumstances.
Yeah, I asked Jonathan today about the going for it for two from the get go on the touchdown that made it 24-16, and where Dylan Black had got hurt, the deep snapper had got hurt. Somebody had stepped on his hand in the third quarter, and they do have a backup. They did take a backup on the trip, Peyton Hogan, who did snap on a punt. But Jonathan just decided, given that they'd already missed 2 field goal kicks, and they were having, they had some, we're going to a backup snapper. They decided to go for 2. I still get the impression he's still on the fence as to whether he should have done that or not. But he said that was his decision, and he wasn't really looking back on that one. I know that RG3 killed Oregon State on TV over that, but I don't know. I mean, I did ask him. I said, if you had to kick a game winner with a PAT or a field goal, would you have done it? And he said, yes, we could have done that. So there was the option. There wasn't like he had no option at all. So I guess in retrospect, probably should have kicked, but at least on the first touchdown. So
yeah, there's always a difference. Yeah, there's always a difference between a coach to a fan or a commentator, where it's like, I would have done this, but the coach did something different. It's like, I never know what that coach's mindset is, but he sees something that I don't see. So, I trust what he does until our season is 0-10,
Yeah.
So, but he saw something different. I'll always be behind Coach Smith, where he's like, yeah, I want to go for 2 on this. Yeah, I know that we have an actual backup snapper, but I think we have the momentum. I think that we have these players that can make these plays. And, if it doesn't work out, it didn't work out, but I still go with my gut decision. And it's like, all right, I respect that, because, there's a difference between me I'm not going to ever say I can go up to Coach Smith's job and say I can do your job better. So it's like, there's a reason why he called it. And I think that, in his mind, it was going to work out the way he saw it. And it just didn't happen.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, as a player, when a coach makes a decision like that's kind of he's taking a different ramp than usual. What are you guys thinking? Are you totally behind that, or do you ever go, I don't know about this?
Oh, 100%. Like, why would you do this? Like, this is sometimes it's just like, I don't understand why you would make that call when we have this much momentum, or we should just do this because it's logical sense. So yeah, you question some, and you're just like, I don't know why you did what you did. But you got to back it. I mean, there's nothing else you can do at that point. I was watching the Washington State game, and this is a good sort of scenario. There was a 4th down call during the game, and the quarterback looked at the coach and said, "No, let's do this." And so the coach said, "All right," but I feel like in the mind of the coach, he was like, "No, we should be punting this." But the quarterback looked at him and said, "Let's do this." And that's the difference between a player and a coach, And they didn't get the 4th down, and they were on like the 50-yard line or the 40-yard line away side. So they weren't going in. They were on the opposite. So, it's like you got 60 yards. You got to put them on your 40. Why would you go for it? But, that's the difference between a coach and a player. Like, well, you think you have momentum, but he's playing a chess game. You're a chess piece.
Well, I think we all know the player always wants to go for it. He never wants to punt. Always. So, well, Stanford's in the rearview mirror now. Next up is for Oregon State is Washington State. A game will be at 6:00 on Saturday at Research Stadium. The Cougars have 8 consecutive wins over Oregon State. 8. And guess who's a part of that streak? You were. What do you remember about? Well, you were in 2 of them.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. Let's see.
Very frustrating.
I'm trying to remember what I'm trying to remember. They were neither one was all that close, was it? If I remember
actually,
right.
The second game we were up 24-0 at halftime.
Oh, really?
And they came back. Yes, and they won it. I remember this game. I remember both Washington State games.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the one that Washington State won 35-31 in Corvallis. Yeah, that one.
And then the year before that, we had Jake Luton getting hurt on the field, where
Right.
everybody thought it was a career-ending hit. That it was definitely a late hit, and the refs didn't call.
Yeah, that was the 52-23 game. But yeah, this streak started in 2014. The Beavers lost 39-32, and they have lost 4 straight games to the Cougars in Corvallis. So it doesn't seem to matter where the game's at. In fact, some of the closest games have been in Pullman. The last 2 times Washington State and Oregon State have played in Pullman, I mean, the Beavers probably should have won both of those games, and somehow they didn't. What do you remember anything about playing Washington State, or anything in particular about that program? Or
They love to spread the ball out. They like to get it to the outsides, get it to the receivers, and let them go to work. Their running backs are all pretty small but stocky. Their defense is decent, but it's not beatable. It's beatable by far. But their offense is, they've always had just great quarterbacks that they just know what to do. And this is a year I'm excited to watch, because their quarterback this year, he throws the ball decently well. He makes some he tries to do miraculous plays, but the positive part about that is it can also go very bad. So I see, we could really have some turnovers here during this game. We have the home field advantage. He's not like any other quarterback that Washington State's had in the past couple of years, and he's different, which is in a good way and bad way for them, but I think it's going to work to our benefit. It's going to be a good game. I truly believe that, and I think we have the ability to come out with this one as well.
the quarterback, this year's Cam Ward, and he is a little different than some of the Cougar quarterbacks of the past. I've only seen him play once. I saw him play against Oregon, and that guy is slippery. I mean, he gets out of some jams that Caleb Williams couldn't get out of, and he makes some unusual throws. I think he's in love with the sidearm throw. He doesn't throw the prettiest ball in the world, but he gets the job done. He's thrown for almost 1,700 yards in 6 games. So, they've got something going there, but really, actually, with the strength of this team is its defense. It's actually one of the better defenses in the Pac-12. They've held some team. Other than the Oregon game, they've been solid this year. They're particularly good against the run, which doesn't exactly fit Oregon State's strength. I mean, Oregon State may need to throw it more than they would want to throw, and we may get to see how this team can do if they've got to throw the ball 30, 35 times. And that could happen Saturday.
Well, I think positive and negative is, I think that Oregon State this year hasn't been predominantly strong in the run game up until late. We've slung the ball around a decent amount, and we've let our outside receivers sort of do the work and make their plays. So I think we'll do well, and opening up the run game. We have to just be able to keep them honest to the run. So I mean, we're gonna have to do what we can in the run game, but as well as get the ball on the outside. Yeah, we're gonna have to move it around. Washington State's played good defense through the year. I still think it's beatable. I think and again, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, Oregon State plays to their competition. So they come out fired up, we'll come out fired up. Especially with a home game, I hope that we'll come out even more fired up, and it's going to be a good game to watch overall.
Well, I think one of the differences between this Washington State team and maybe the ones that you might be recalling from your day and even recently is that Mike Leach was the coach for most of the streak, and he is decidedly an offensive guy. I don't think he even gets involved with defense, whereas now they're run by a guy that's a former defensive coordinator. So defense is his deal. So we'll see. I kind of think it's not going to. I kind of think this is going to be a low scoring game on Saturday. I actually picked the Cougars to win 24-21. I could see the team winning, but I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. What do you think?
I'm so bad at picking scores, but I think it's going to be I almost see it being like a 24-21 game. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 24-21, yeah.
Yeah, I see
You're going Beavers or Cougars?
I'm going to say the Cougars because when I pick the opposite team, Oregon State does different, so I'm going to say Cougars.
Well, you got to go with what you think is going to happen, not what you not with the jinx version. But it sounds like we're both going with Washington State with the thought that either team could win the game. So, I don't know. We'll see. It's only the second time I picked against Oregon State this year. I picked them to lose at Utah, and this is the only one I picked was Utah. I picked them to win all the other games. So I'm right on most of them except for the USC game. And really, that one could went either way as well. So, all right. Well, that's. I think we've done enough damage here. So that's a wrap on this week's edition of Beaver Banter podcast. You can find this podcast wherever you look for your favorite podcasts. Be sure to check out OregonLive for all our Oregon State content. We'll be back next week to talk about the Beavers game against Washington State, and then we're going to look ahead to the October 22 game against mighty Colorado. Well, maybe not so mighty, but anyway, we'll see you next week.